Football Manager is an RPG. I know that sounds a little bit strange, but trust me, it really is. In fact, I can prove it to you. Let's go take a look. All right, first of all, some full disclosure for you. I am definitely the wrong person to be the RPG gatekeeper. I'm not an expert on any RPG games, not much of an expert on the genre other than playing Dragon Warrior when I was a kid and Final Fantasy, some of the other NES, Super NES era RPGs. And so because I don't know exactly what an RPG is and what an RPG isn't, I trust the experts. In this case, this is the CRPG Addict. You can find him at crpgaddict.blogspot.com. In fact, I'm going to leave a link down below in the description. I don't know Chester Bolingbroke, which is what he calls himself on the blog. I don't know him personally, but I've read him for over the last decade. This is the guy to go to when you're interested in computer role-playing games, especially older games. Now, he has a definition here of what is and what is not a computer role-playing game that I find very intriguing and very telling when it comes to Football Manager. Specifically, for him, character development needs to be the driving mechanic of gameplay for a game to be considered an RPG. Specifically, he says, number one, throughout the game, the character must become stronger, more resilient, and more capable of moving forward. Number two is that this character development must be separate from inventory acquisition. In other words, you can't just go like buy something and then the character suddenly is smarter because he got that. I mean, duh. Number three is that character development must not consist solely of improvements to maximum health. And number four is that players must have some control over the rate or details of development. Now, you're probably thinking, what does that have to do with Football Manager? Let's go take a look. This is the screen that I was looking for. So we're starting a new game here. Those of you who are veterans of Football Manager know where I'm going with this. So in Football Manager, you don't have like health or whatever, but you do have attributes, right? If you've played Dungeons and Dragons, if you've played other role-playing games, you've seen screens that are like this. At the beginning of the game here, you can choose what coaching badge you have, what past playing experience you have, and that experience will give you a certain number of points that you can use to expand your attributes as a manager. This is the chief way in which Football Manager is a role-playing game because this fits into Chester's definition, right? So there is character development in this game, but it's not just imaginary character development. There is real development for you as a manager in Football Manager. You can watch your avatar, your in-game persona, turn into a better coach with different types of attributes. As you progress, you can get higher coaching badges. In fact, you can control the rate of progression. If you want to stay at a National C license or stay at nothing, you can do so for your entire career. You can't change your past playing experience as you go along, but your experience as a manager in the game will also give you stronger attributes. This is the thing that anybody who's ever played a journeyman save, or we call it what, like a Park to Prem or non-League to Legend or whatever phrase it is you have for your save, everybody who's done this type of save in the past knows that character development Football Manager is a very real thing, and as a consequence, Football Manager can, in all seriousness, be considered an RPG. So now where do we go from this? This is kind of a boring video if that's all we're talking about. Well, thankfully, the CRPG Addict also has a way for rating role-playing games against each other. And so we're going to go through his Gimlet list and take a look at a few aspects of Football Manager and see how they compare. All right, here we are in my save. This should look familiar to a lot of you. First up on the Gimlet list, of course, is G, not for graphics, but for game world. And the idea here is that you have a game that has a world that is a world into itself and that has depth and that has mythology and that has ideas and history behind it and so on. Football Manager hits this right on the head. Absolutely. The game world in this game is so deep and it's so modifiable, and there's so many stories and there's so much history there. I'll just give you a real quick look at here to give you an idea. So here we go to club info. We can learn more about Yenbian FC, which is the club that I manage. You should come check me out, by the way, in our save. And you can look at the history of the club. You can see the status of the club. You can see our history going all the way back from 2018 all the way back to, looks like, 1997. And there are different records there. There's different pieces of mythology. You can see how we've done in competitions in the past. You can see the landmarks that we've had. Some things like managers and so on are not fully up to date in this game, but you can actually edit it and you can put in that history if you want. Football Manager has a very, very rich game world. In fact, I would say richer than many of those old RPGs that you see on that blog. Next up on the Gimlet is character creation and development. We've talked a little bit about that already. I'm showing you this is my profile here with the club. You'll see there are no attribute numbers. Oh, I guess there are attribute numbers you can see, so it's not as hardcore as I thought. We don't care so much about that right now, though. What we care about is that different aspects of my way of playing come up as I go along and play. And it can see the languages that I can speak, many of which I can actually speak in real life. I even have relationships with different players in the game. This is an example of a very, very deep world of character development and very, very interesting thing. And we'll go straight now into NPC interactions. So I have problems with the NPC interactions in Football Manager, but they do exist. They absolutely exist, and you can see them in different ways, especially here on Team Dynamics. You can see, as I've talked about, Huang Bowen's upset, Mr. Kwon is upset, Liu Yue is upset. I haven't mentioned that so much. And you can sort of interact with players, but not fully. Right, I can interact with Mr. Kwon, but I can't really do much other than ask him for advice or warn him or let him rest or something like that. That's one of the problems with Football Manager, in that the NPC interaction with players and with journalists is very, very limited. This is something that really needs to be improved in this game further on to further cement its status as the best sports RPG. All right, next on the list here is encounters and foes. And encounters and foes, of course, we have the ultimate bad guys, which are all of the teams that we play against. So I'm filming this before we have our big Chinese FA Cup against Tianjin. You can see there are tons of different foes. You can learn a whole lot about the enemies that you have. You can scout them ahead of time. You can come up with a different plan to attack each different team or enemy that comes along. It is true that there is a sort of randomness here. The way that match results are determined are almost completely random. Weird things happen all the time in Football Manager, like you start off playing against Hangzhou and you have to go to penalties and you're like, boy, this team's really not that good, and then you end up winning a bunch of games. Or early in the season, before anybody knows the tactic, you lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row, 6 friendlies in a row, including one against, this is Sonbong in North Korea, and a bunch of other teams who are much further up the list than we are in the Chinese ladder. And so, as you can see, there's a huge array of different teams to play against, and there's a lot of enemies, each with their own style. Now, next on the gimlet is magic. Guess what? There's not magic in Football Manager. I guess there sort of is combat in the game. But in terms of magic, there's really not much until you come over to training, and this is where the magic really happens. You have all sorts of things you can do with training. So it's no secret here. If you've watched my videos, I use evidence-based training schedule from Max over at Evidence-Based Football Manager. If you haven't watched his videos yet, you need to watch him. He's really good. You can do other forms of magic, right? You can have guys be mentored. So we're trying to get Wu Ping to believe in himself, and we have good players who are trying to mentor him. And they're having a somewhat significant impact on him. The thing is that players can change over time. Now, I'm playing hardcore mode, so we're not going to be able to see a whole bunch of things about his training, but we do know that the training can increase, and he's been performing well in his game and his attributes. If we could see them, we would see that they are going up and that they're pushing upwards. For me, that's a kind of magic. That works as kind of Football Manager's version of magic, and it doesn't use up a lot of magic points either, which is a pretty cool thing. All right, for the first time in this video, I have a stretch, and this is equipment. There's no equipment, but what you have in place of equipment is staff that function basically as a type of equipment, and that good staff will enhance your squad and will make it easier for you to do things that you really want to do, and poor staff might not enhance your squad as much as you think, or might even be a detriment to you if you have staff members that have low self-belief or are really bad at working with your club, or if you have a lot of young players and nobody's good at working with youngsters. The equipment in Football Manager is really your staff, and that's the easiest way to understand it. Next on the gimlet is economy. I don't really even need to talk about this, do I? I mean, Football Manager has the greatest economy out of any of these games. It's got a much more deep and much more enveloping economic system than any other game in its category. There are RPGs that do not have an economy that is as rich and as fulfilling and as deep as Football Manager. You can look at your expenditure. You can analyze it deep down. There are all sorts of crazy things you have to pay, like huge amounts of Chinese tax. You can look into your income. You can have different plans if you want to try to lift up certain parts of your income, your revenue, and so on. You can do all sorts of different things. You can take out loans. We're not going to because we have the sugar daddy who's in charge of us. You can look at different projections here when you're in this. You can look into your sponsorship. You can try to get more. The economy of this game is deep and it's international and it works really, really well. And the money that gets put into the game ends up being spent. We don't have any of that stuff like we did with that Diablo game a couple years ago where the economy was totally screwed up. That doesn't happen here. The economy is very, very well done. It's very well thought out. For the economy in this game, I think that this is up there with the best of RPGs. All right, next on the list is quests. Next on our Gimlet list. Yeah, for quests, we kind of have competitions. And so here we have the Chinese National Second Division Northern Group that we're dominating. And the other quest is the Chinese FA Cup where we have to be competitive. And I don't know if we're competitive enough or not. We go to the Skull and Crossbones, we see the quests that the boss has given us here. And the quests include some things like we got to work within the wage budget or whatever. Spend the original transfer budget. I'm still working on that. But also, this is what they want us to do. You want to gain promotion, you want to be competitive, and then we want to build upon that, and so on and so forth. That's what the quest is like in Football Manager. It's very, very much like an RPG, just like any role-playing game you would play with different quests you can undertake. You can even come up with your own quests that are not officially in the game if you want to not sign foreign players, for example, or have a youth-only challenge, not sign anybody, not even hire a scout. You can do that if you want. There's plenty of quests in this game, trust me. And again, it's up there with the best of the RPGs. All right, next on the list is graphics, sound, and inputs. I'm not going to bore you too much with the sound. You can listen to the melodious sound of my voice. Here are goals from our latest match. You can see the graphics in Football Manager are okay. I would give this probably a 5 out of 10 for graphics. I consider these graphics to be better than any other game in Football Manager's class, especially better than OOTP if you've played that. It's not FIFA. It's probably never going to be like the EA games, but the graphics here are actually really good. I know a lot of people on the forums and on Reddit and so on will complain about it, but to be honest with you, I consider these graphics to be probably on par with, or not on par. I think that it's just as good as just about anything we can expect from this type of game that's not graphically intensive to begin with, and improvements are being made all the time. I actually really like the match engine in FM23 despite all the complaints. I love the animations. I like the reactions. It feels more and more like a smooth game of football, and I think that SI is actually doing well. And yes, I know all about the things that happen where, oh, your defenders didn't move back at all on that one, or some stupid thing takes place. I know that there are little glitches that come up from time to time. Still, given the type of game that this is, I would say that the graphics are absolutely excellent. And I definitely think that the graphics here are competitive with all sorts of old computer RPGs. Again, it's not Skyrim, It's not going to be like that. You're not going to have this crazy, like, super 3D experience. And I'm happy for it because then I don't have to get, like, the best and newest computer possible just to play the game. But the graphics are pretty good. I mean, you got to admit. All right, things are kind of frozen here, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. The very final thing on the Gimlet is called gameplay, and in particular, Chester talks about pacing of the game, replayability of the game, and the fact that the game is alinear. That's definitely the case here, right? We can look at different vacancies that are up here, which is why I've pulled this up. There are all sorts of places I could go if I wanted to leave Yanbian FC. Tons and tons of places where there are vacancies and managers all over the world. This is because I have so many lower leagues put into the game. Football Manager is an RPG. There's no way getting around this. Look at all the adventures that you can have and all the ways that you can develop yourself as an in-game person. Is there any wonder that this game is so addictive? Anyway, that's it from me. Football Manager is an RPG, hands down. I think that there's no discussion about it. I think there's no question about it whatsoever. And I think that that's one of the reasons why the game ends up being so addictive and conquers our lives so much. Let me know what you think. If you agree, if you disagree, if you think I'm off my rocker, let me know what you think about that. And I'll see you later on. Talk to you later. Bye.